Why would anyone sacrifice their stable life just to build a business that's bound to fail? Well, that's exactly what I did. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If you know me personally, you would know that I'm a man who doesn't like to take big risks without having some kind of insurance. I have always avoided becoming a leader or being someone who takes the lead to start something. I would always prefer if I could simply rely on someone else to take the responsibility and the credits while just working behind the scenes. I rarely take any risk unless I feel that there's no other way around. Yet I still decided to take a big leap of faith to not start just something that I like, but to solve a problem that I feel responsible to as a Muslim, despite the fact that I have basically zero background in business and entrepreneurship. I love working on small projects and tools to solve problems that are relevant and existing in our everyday life and help making people's lives easier using whatever skills that I have. But having these skills and having the ability to manage a business and monetize and market it are completely different stories. But Alhamdulillah, it has been officially 3 months since I have launched my business. It's definitely far from being a success story yet, but at least I'm still striving to do better and still able to survive for the time being. I will be honest that the whole journey has been extremely stressful, but I know that inshallah at some point this will end, and with every hardship comes ease. So therefore, I want to document my experience so far, and hopefully one day inshallah I can look back and appreciate for all the blessings that Allah has been giving me along the way. If you're interested in my personal journey and the projects that I'm working on and my personal insights about our community in the context of East Asia and Taiwan and Chinese-speaking Muslims, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and become a supporter of my mission. Before I talk about how I came up with the idea in the first place, I need to first talk about my work in the community. I had been actively involved with the Dawah in Taiwan since 2022. It wasn't out of my interest or my passion in particular, but rather it's a growing sense of responsibility from observing the state of the Muslim community. I never even had the idea of doing Dawah years before, but I started to realize that my skills and my abilities are very much needed for the community. So I started contributing to the local Dawah and serving the community. Some of my work include creating the Islam Taiwan website and constantly building new features and giving mosque tours, giving talks at schools and universities, teaching and guiding new reverts, consultation, translation works, articles, videos, contents, you name it. Most of these works involve interactions with both Muslims and non-Muslims, young Muslims and old Muslims, new converts and born Muslims. And by the way, I was doing all of this while still working as a full-time software engineer in a private company. So gradually, I started gaining more experience and I started seeing more patterns. The questions I receive from people start to seem a bit repetitive. I started figuring out the problems in our community at a deeper level that I was only able to see after reaching to this point. There are problems that are visible and obvious right in front of our eyes, and there are problems that are bigger than what we perceive. So for example, the Muslim youth were disconnected from the masjid. The response to this problem can be to organize just more events for the youth. But the bigger problem is that most of them don't find Islam relevant in their lives in the first place because of how the parents raised them and how the environment influenced them. And for example, Muslims want to marry non-Muslims. You can simply blame the Muslim why he would want to do that. But the bigger issue could be that maybe the parents were making marriage too hard for them, or maybe it was simply too hard to find another Muslim to marry in the first place. So I knew that there's a lot of work to do for the future of our community. And I started wishing that maybe at some point in my life, I could be dedicating 100% of my entire time serving the community without having to worry about my finances, because I prefer my contributions to have a direct impact to our community and to the Ummah rather than just being indirect. But I just kept this idea at the back of my head and thought that maybe someday when I save more money, or maybe I have a really nice idea that I liked, then I would do it. And I never expected that moment to come this soon. Then slowly and slowly, the more I invest my time for the community, the more I feel distant from my work as a software engineer. I don't even know if I was a full-time software engineer or a full-time community worker. And that is why I started feeling that doing all these community work while still working at the company feels like it's dragging me behind. I feel that as a person, I should be able to do more than this. And I'm definitely not saying that working as a software engineer is lame or not a good thing. Actually, I believe that we need more Muslims who excel in fields that non-Muslims are also involved in. And it's also my responsibility as a man to provide for my family. But at the same time, we also need to look at ourselves from a holistic view, from the perspective and for the benefits of the Ummah. Think of yourself as a pawn of this Ummah. Where should this pawn be placed? What is the role of this particular pawn amidst all these other pawns? Is this pawn doing what it's supposed to be doing? Is it really using its full potential? And I remember a quote from Dr. Tariq Suwaidan from Kuwait. He said that you're wasting your time if you are not functioning according to your abilities. Therefore, we need to have a good idea about our own core competencies. What are we actually good at instead of just doing what we feel like doing? The question I would ask myself is, does our community currently need more Muslim software engineers, or does it need more role models and leaders serving Islam? Because every community has different needs. And from what I have observed from our community, the answer was very clear. And it wouldn't have been this clear if I hadn't actually spent enough time to work for it. And that sentiment started getting stronger and stronger. I stopped feeling attached to the work I was doing until one day the company that I was working for had a financial crisis, and we either had to choose to get fired or have an unpaid leave. And I took it as a sign that this is it. If I don't start something now, when am I going to do it? This is the golden time. So I decided to quit. And the moment I have decided, I was also thinking about what exactly should be my next step. I still didn't have a clear idea back then, but what I knew for sure is that it has to do with something related to helping our community. Now, when a Muslim in our community thinks about doing a business for Muslims, the number one, or maybe even the only option, is to do halal food business. Either you work for a halal restaurant or you work for halal certification. The idea of Muslims opening a business that's not related to food is almost unprecedented. And that is also the reason why I never wanted to do anything with halal food business, despite a lot of people telling me to do it. I said that I would do anything but halal food business because I feel that it's getting so saturated. Like, yes, there's still a lot of work to do for the halal scene in Taiwan, but even if I don't step up, someone else will, and trust me, not just Muslims, but even non-Muslims are showing up for the game because this market has good money. And this isn't even related to my profession in the first place, whether it's food or certification or business management, it's not my expertise. And I will leave it to someone else who is more capable. What I want to do is something that not everyone is able to do. I want to solve a problem that no one has stepped up to solve. So I started taking some more time to reflect on myself, to reflect on my past achievements, to reflect on my personal growth over the past few years. What are the strengths that I have? What are the skills that I gained? What kind of lifestyle am I expecting? What will be my priorities in my life? Where do I want to live? How much time do I want to spend with my family? And so on. And that gave me much more clarity, and I was able to narrow my options down into just a few. What I was almost certain is that it would be a service-based business that offers services to Muslims. And I was also thinking about maybe like online coaching and consulting and stuff like that. Then meanwhile, I was also still planning some activities for our community. And one thing that I figured out that we still haven't done is to cater to our single Muslims, because more and more people have come to me personally and asked me if I could help them find a good Muslim partner. I realized that this is a rising concern and a growing demand, and nobody has been doing anything to tackle this problem seriously. The problem is not just about Muslims having a hard time finding compatible Muslims, but Muslims are marrying non-Muslims. Muslims who weren't very practicing in the first place compromised the deen and married non-Muslims because it was too hard for them to find Muslim spouses. Yes, most of them do have the Shahada ceremony before they officiated the nikah, but what's the point of saying those words with your mouth if your mind doesn't even comprehend its meaning? And little do they know the impact and damage that this action has caused to our community is irreversible. My generation was supposed to have even more Muslims than the previous one, but sadly, the number of converts of my age you would see in the masjid is more than the number of born Muslims. You could also say it's because of the environment, or it's because the masjid wasn't providing enough resources or education or classes, but I believe the one who holds the most responsibility is the upbringing of the family. And that didn't go well simply because either one or both of the parents wouldn't even identify themselves as Muslims or practicing Muslims. So I was just randomly having a conversation with one of our brothers in the masjid, and somehow I started talking about how we should try to organize some kind of meetup events for the single Muslims who want to get married. Even though I was aware that some people tried to organize similar events in the past, but from what I have observed, it looks pretty awkward, and I didn't really like the gender mixing aspect of it. And since our community isn't that big anyways, if we were to organize multiple times, I can assume that the same bunch of people would just show up, which makes it even more awkward. So I started planning. I tried to think of different ways to avoid all the problems you could have while conducting this type of event. I was imagining a scenario of having the single Muslims submit their CVs and pair them up with whom we think are suitable and put a middleman to accompany their conversation to avoid seclusion and provide them some guidance. But in the end, I just didn't find it feasible. One is the amount of effort that needs to be put in this and the number of people that are willing to help. And then it just doesn't feel right to let a bunch of single Muslims to look at another bunch of single Muslims. And some of them might just target the same person altogether at the beginning because of how charismatic or attractive they are, and turning it into some kind of weird competition. And then I kept on trying to refine and optimize this idea because I really feel that this is such a serious issue that needs a more systematic approach to solving it at a larger scale. Until finally, I came up with the prototype of my current service. I realized that the best way to do this at scale is to conduct this in the digital space. So I also tried to research the current different Muslim matchmaking platforms and the pros and cons and see what do people say about them. When I look at the matchmaking solutions we have in the market, none of them seem to fit our needs because most of these matchmaking apps are used mainly by the Muslims who are living in the West. It's still relatively new for the Muslims in the East. And by East, I mean East Asia, not South Asia, not Southeast Asia. And it's not just about geographical location, but the language difference and the cultural difference as well. And since people are still very new to this concept, they'll naturally feel conflicted. And there's even this social stigma that looks down on meeting a partner through online platforms. Despite realizing all these issues, I started making some videos and tried to collect some questionnaire feedbacks from many Muslims. And I saw that indeed people do have a strong demand for this, and they're willing to use such a platform. So I started building the application for the next few months and reiterated the entire structure a few times in the middle after seeking advice from people. I even almost gave up on this idea because I later found out how the laws and regulation in my country doesn't actually allow this type of service to exist. But later on, I still stood firm on this and I went to Malaysia to register a company. And the entire process of development and preparations took almost about half a year. 1, because there was Ramadan. 2, I went to Hajj. And 3, I was still involved with the community work. When it was finally ready to be launched, I had very mixed feelings. I felt excited and I also felt stressed. And I didn't really know what to expect. So of course, I made a lot of dua. After announcing the news and telling people to join, I was a bit sad that there weren't as many people as I had expected in the beginning. But the good thing, alhamdulillah, was that people didn't just flood in all at once. I was still able to handle everything and the server didn't crash. Everything was under control. So I was observing where the users would get stuck at and try to optimize the flow until it becomes seamless. And as more and more users start to join in, I could see that I was able to attract the Muslims from the countries that I wanted to target, which are East and Southeast Asian countries. But I also started to realize that people have a certain expectation from the platform, which I never promised, which is that most people want to be paired with a local East Asian Muslim. I mean, yes, we know that there is a growing number of East Asian Muslims, but we're still talking about a ratio of 99 to 1. No joke. In every 100 Muslims in East Asia, there's probably only one of them who is a local. But imagine the rest of them all want to target and get that one person. So ethnicity preference is one big issue. The other issue is the gender ratio. Majority of the users are female, which I kind of expected at the beginning, but I didn't expect the difference to be this much. Not only in terms of quantity, but also in terms of quality. Because we would review every single profile submitted to us, and we could see very clearly that women are way more serious in getting married than men. And it's not only about the ratio, but even the average age of women are way higher than men as well. The average age of women on the platform are above the age of 30, and the average age of men are below the age of 30, which makes the matching super, super hard. And I believe this is a major issue that I'm gonna have to deal with in the long future. As for now, I am working on trying to expand the user base and target more brothers that are above the age of 30 to try to balance the current matching pool. I knew that this was going to be a tough journey, but I would rather have small results than compromise my principles to get big numbers, my principles in the vetting process, my principles in the additional layers of security by having supervisors in chat room conversation, and in the commitment to pay. When I think about the future of this platform, I want to be very clear about one thing. I didn't start AzwajaMatch to chase numbers or trends or to compete with the existing matchmaking apps. From the very beginning, my intention was to solve a real problem for my own community. I've seen many sincere and righteous Muslims who genuinely wanted to get married and they deserve a good partner, but they didn't have the right network, they didn't know how to approach families properly, or they simply didn't feel comfortable accepting the current matchmaking culture. Especially in East Asia and the Chinese-speaking world, the culture is really making marriage unnecessarily difficult and confusing. And this is happening to both Muslim and non-Muslim families. And my vision is to build something that protects the dignity of the Muslims without having to compromise the Islamic principles in the process. I am not going to allow it to turn into a dating app, even if it means that I will have a slower growth. I refuse to compromise on my values just to get the numbers. Right now, my mission is very focused to help at least 1,000 righteous Muslims find their spouses and build strong, stable families, starting from East Asia and the Chinese-speaking Muslim world, and then gradually expanding to the other parts of the world. If Muslims from other regions benefit from it along the way, then alhamdulillah. But the core problem I'm trying to solve has always been local. In the coming months, my hope is to see more successful matches, not just in quantity, but in quality. At the same time, I want to continue creating content to educate people about the reality of marriage, especially helping the brothers to manage their marriage expectations. Because honestly, from what I have experienced so far, matchmaking two people for marriage is harder than helping someone say the Shahada. Because you're dealing with so much emotion rather than just logic. You're dealing with fear, you're dealing with ego and culture, family, pressure, PTSD, finances, and expectations, all in one package. But similar to helping someone say the Shahada, I also believe that the reward of bringing two people together is beyond imagination. To help two righteous people to build a relationship that is beloved by Allah, which contributes to a stronger Ummah. This is the kind of challenge that feels worth trying. This is the kind of responsibility that I'm willing to fight for. And alhamdulillah for everything so far, for all the lessons that I've learned, and for the support of my family, my parents, my brothers, and also my wife, who have been standing on my side during the entire journey. Whatever comes next, I place my trust in Allah and I ask Him to forgive my sins and to put barakah in whatever good comes out of this effort. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.